Motorcycles, are they still worth the risk? Are motorcycles really dangerous, or are there unseen forces lurking in the shadows, working against us? Now, it sounds good, it sounds right when people say motorcycles are risky. Pretty obvious to all of us that there is no protection on a motorcycle if something happens, and we are bombarded by the media and the dude that you talk to at whatever social gathering. They're always telling us that motorcycles are dangerous. Maybe it sinks in. But are they really dangerous, or are there just unseen forces lurking around the shadows, working against us? That's what we're going to look at today, and it's been prompted by my reading of a couple of articles this week. The first article detailed, it was actually a media release by the police, and then certain news outlets have picked it up, and it's detailed the fact that 1 in 5 people who die on motorcycles are doing so in a group ride. Group rides are dangerous. Now, the second article referenced fatalities in the state of New South Wales here in Australia. They're higher than normal, so they've decided they're going to make it harder for people to get their licenses, and they're going to implement some other measures. For example, beginners need to wear compulsory safety gear. Now, we'll get into more detail on those articles later as we go through the following points, which I believe are making motorcycling harder every year for all of us. Now, number one is the cost, and that's really obvious. We all spend money on the maintenance of our motorcycles. That's servicing them, buying new tyres. There's wear and tear, so there are replacement parts to be purchased and to be fitted. And then there's the big cost of registration and insurance. That seems to be going up every year. In particular, insurance for everything has skyrocketed. If you know why this is the case, put it in the comments, because insurance has gone crazy. And then there's the fun tax, and that is where you modify your Harley Davidson, or maybe you've got some other type of bike. You're spending big money, you've got to change your handlebars, your seat, the wheels, you've got to repaint it, hot up the engine, make it go really quick. And depending on who you are, you've got to spend extra money on tyres because you've got to do a burnout at least once a week. What other fun taxes are there? Exhaust pipes, you've got to make it noisy. Bling, chrome stuff, tassels, I don't know, whatever else you want to spend your money on your beautiful motorcycle. Then there's the actual cost of the motorcycles. It seems to be that the cost of motorcycles is skyrocketing. Every year they are getting more expensive. Some of the bigger touring Harley Davidsons are ridiculously expensive. So I guess it feels like we can't keep up because inflation is skyrocketing prices everywhere. I think it's deliberate. That's how the government actually pays down its debt. They tax the bejesus out of you. They spend all your money with no accountability. Now, once all the slaves have been taxed to the max and there's nobody left to steal money from, the government implements inflation. Now, they do this because a $1 trillion debt that they can't pay down is a trivial amount of money in 20 or 30 or 40 years if the prices of everything are inflated. That's how it works. It's designed to help you if you own assets, and it's designed to bleed you dry if you don't. That's the system. It sounds really negative, but I'm a positive person, so stick with me. Everything's always all right. If you crash, it hurts, but if your skin peels off from a slide, you're really gonna cry, and you're gonna destroy that manly image that you've cultivated over the years. So wear Resurgence Gear motorcycle clothing. It'll save you in a slide. It looks great, just like casual clothing. Check this out. And remember, if they've got this much faith in their clothing, you've got to get on board. Wear Old Not Dead supporter gear. It's not going to save you in a slide, but you are going to look super cool wearing it. T-shirts. I'm wearing one now. Singlets, caps, stickers, patches. We've got alpaca wool beanies. How's that? And talk about warm, we've even got hoodies that are so warm you don't need a hood. Wear some Old Not Dead gear and show the world you've still got it. If you're buying from overseas, Australian dollar's been sent down the toilet. I'll put the exchange rate on the screen. You're getting a bargain. Now, number two, the road rules. The road rules are working against you. Here where I live in the state of Victoria, there's always talk in the news about lowering the speed limit. It's already seriously low. They're talking about bringing in 30 km/h zones in built up areas and 80 km/h zones in rural areas. Why? Because they're idiots. Now, to justify getting paid every week, they've got to come up with crazy ideas that appear to be good. For example, if we all walk everywhere, there'll be no car accidents. If we don't have motorcycles, fatalities will go to zero. That's how smart they are. Now, I don't know what it's like everywhere in the world, but here where I live, the road rules are quite draconian. Go over the speed limit by a little bit, 3 times in 3 years, and no, they don't do that, but you lose your license. And I find that really interesting because if you look at the number of people who have been fined for not having a license, it runs at around 7,000 people per year, I think, here in Victoria, and they don't release the numbers of people who have actually lost their license. I've heard reports between 50,000 and 200,000, and we're talking about a population of 7 odd million people in Victoria. There's a lot of people driving around without a license because the rules are draconian. And we all know that on a motorcycle, it is very easy to break the speed limit, especially if we're talking 1 or 2 kilometers an hour over. The last time I got a fine, I was in a country town. I was literally at a standstill. I accelerated, and we're talking on a Harley Davidson, right? Not on a Panigale. I've accelerated to the speed limit. I've gone over the speed limit, and as you know, by the time you look down and go, okay, well, I'm going to adjust this, I'm in a country town, I'm a few kilometres over the speed limit, and some panorkel, and I'm being polite, has flicked me with a radar. So you get a big fine. You can always re-earn the money, but losing those points means you're going to lose your license very easily. So as I was saying, they hide the statistics of how many people do actually lose their license, and that's a warning sign. It means a lot of people are losing their license. Now, there are some easy ways to get around the laws and drive without a license, which I'm not going to mention on the video, and I suspect a lot of people are doing that because they've got to go to work, they've got to feed their family, they've got to go to the shop to buy food. I mean, seriously, what do these politicians think? Now, we can all tolerate this if it's the highway patrol catching an armed robber. He's stolen the Prime Minister's sandwiches that he was going to have for lunch. He's doing 200 kilometres an hour down the main street of a country town, one-handed, eating a sandwich in the other hand. Fine. Help him see the error of his ways. But it's not like that. Seriously, it's your mother getting caught for doing 5 or 6 kilometres over the speed limit on a beautiful sunny day with no traffic around. So put in the comments, is it a privilege to be able to drive, or is it your right to be able to drive, have transport, be mobile? If you're watching this and you're saying, well, don't break the law, you won't be in trouble, unsubscribe now if you're a subscriber. Never poison me with your presence again. I can see you on your phone. That's you there. You stink. Now, if you're a highway patrol officer watching this, don't be so smug because you're collecting tax for a government that will replace you with artificial intelligence, robotics, and other type of software and technology. You're going to be made redundant because they're going to raise revenue in the cheapest way possible. That's how they make the maximum profit. And don't forget, you're helping the enemy, that's the government, you're helping the enemy fleece your own people. You're supposed to be one of us. So put in the comments, no swear words please, because YouTube won't show your comment and I'll never get to see it. Put in the comments whether that is the definition of dumb and lowlife. So if we can accept that a lot of the road rules are there working against you in order to collect taxation, you've got to ask yourself, why are these articles appearing in the newspaper? Because so instead of coming up with initiatives like making better roads, redesigning dangerous intersections, educating drivers and motorcyclists, increased training for people, what they're doing is they're fining everybody. So these articles that they release, really they're seeding people for the extra fines or a particular operation that's going to be coming up. And we see this here every spring. October is Motorcycle Safety Month. Expect a couple of extra fines. Now, a lot of people will blame the police for this, but it does come from the top, which are politicians. I don't know why politicians are at the top. They are absolutely they're caught in a vicious cycle, so let's all get our violins out and have some sympathy for them. It works like this. There's a few extra fatalities. The politicians go into a panic. They come up with great solutions. Let's make the roads safer. Let's implement some education and training. Let's have a smaller population. And then they ring Treasury and they see if there's any money left over because they've just had a few junkets, they've hired some strippers, and they've filled their hidden investment portfolio. Treasury says we're broke. So the politicians go into a panic. Now it's time to increase the fines so that they raise more tax. Someone yells from the back corner, "Oi, we can't just have more taxes, there's got to be good reasons." So bang, out come the newspaper articles, everyone's dying. We're saving lives, that's a good reason to fine you more. Now that was a good rant. Number 3, it's hard to get a license. Now it's probably a good thing that learners need more skill and more training, and that there are some obstacles to just jumping on a motorcycle, especially if it's a high-powered one. In order to keep motorcycling growing, you've got to have some incentives to balance out the extra difficulties. For example, in that article I was talking about, if learners have to get safety gear, which is a good thing, but if learners have to get safety gear in order to be on the road on a motorcycle, that's going to add at least another $1,000 to the cost of getting a motorcycle license, because they're not just going to say go to Aldi and buy an ice cream container, eat the ice cream and stick it on your head. They're going to say it's got to be something that is approved and certified and stamped by the mighty government to be safe. And that means the cost of that clothing is going to go right up there, because that's the way it works as soon as the government steps in. And that means the cost of that clothing is probably going to go up by a lot. Now, the typical 18-year-old is not just flush with money coming down from the heavens. They're probably going to be struggling to get a motorcycle anyway, let alone additional costs. So I think there needs to be incentives by either the motorcycle industry, probably government subsidised, because if they can afford strippers, they can afford to help 18-year-olds with some safety clothing. Now, number 4, declining interest in motorcycle events. Now, what I'm noticing here in Melbourne is there doesn't seem to be that much interest, or let's call it a waning interest, in a lot of the motorcycle events. Now, that means people attending, but also vendors showing or selling their wares. There also doesn't seem to be that much coordination between events. So just a couple of weeks ago, there were 2 potentially large events happening on the same weekend. Wouldn't be difficult to call each other and come to some sort of compromise, because the motorcycle community is not that large. We could have everybody turning up one weekend to that one and everybody turning up the next weekend to the other. It'd make it a lot more fun. Now, part of the problem is poor marketing, but you can't really blame the organisers of the events. They've usually got full-time jobs doing something completely different. They're not experts at marketing anyway, so that does make it harder. Perhaps everybody that's a motorcyclist that's going to these events should help promote them. And because of the poor vendor turnout at a lot of these events, there's not really that much keeping people there for the long term. So the events sort of have a very short peak. Everybody goes home. That's the end of it. You need something to keep people there. Now, number 5 is young people are not interested anymore. Now, if young people aren't interested anymore, that means motorcycling is declining. Now, if you look at the stats, motorcycling is declining in the Western world. There is an argument to say that's because we are going through a rough patch via the economy. But with young people, there's actually enormous competition with things like video games. You don't need to jump on a motorcycle and ride anywhere to get your thrills. You can just jump on a video game and dodge some bullets for cheap thrills in your lounge room at home. So why risk your life on a motorcycle? Why go to the hassle of getting a motorcycle license? Now, if you want to go deeper into the topic, we can actually see that there are less children being born by Generation X and Generation Y. I think that's the people from about 59 years all the way down to 30 years of age. And it's too late to change that, because their time has already passed. Those children that weren't born, we can't make them reappear anywhere. And that means the only way to keep populations up is through immigration. And that's what the Western world is doing. The problem is the Western world is importing from third world countries, and they have a different attitude to riding a motorcycle. From a lot of third world countries, you're getting motorcycling that is treated as transport if necessary, rather than a recreational activity or a lifestyle as it is in the Western world. Big population problems coming up. Now, number 6, that's technology. Technology is working against us, even though it gives us a lot of benefits. I've already spoken about the fines we get for doing such minor things. This is all dished out by artificial intelligence, by remote cameras, and soon there are going to be robots that are doing the basics of policing. And really that means with technology it's much easier to catch people doing minor mistakes, and you can catch them en masse. That's working against us big time. Now, as the computers in vehicles advance, we get a lot of benefits, like for example this beautiful street glide that I've got. I love the fact that I've got a map in front of me if I'm going somewhere that I'm not familiar with. But it's working against us in the longer term, because it won't be long before there are computers in our bikes that pick up those minor discrepancies and send them straight to your local police station. It won't be too long before the emissions authorities link their computers to the components that are compulsory on a motorcycle. That means no more loud pipes, no more engine modifications unless they're approved. And it's not a far cry to say that the insurance companies are going to be delving into your computer to see how fast you were going when you had that accident. And you can see it happening all over the world. Have a look at the Chinese social credit score system. That is coming to the Western world very soon through the implementation of face recognition. So what that means is they're going to track your meat consumption from what you bought at the supermarket on Wednesday. They're going to say your carbon print is too high because we don't want any more cows farting, so don't encourage them by eating their meat. You can't now ride your motorcycle because that's 18 carbon points and you've only got 3 left. You ate too much steak. That's where it's going if you don't fight against it. You can see snippets of it popping up everywhere, easy to extrapolate. Have a look at the UK. They've implemented smart cities. They've got cameras that restrict people's movement based on license plates. I've done videos before where I've shown subscription services in cars to turn on certain features. It's not a far cry before you need a subscription service to use certain features on your motorcycle. Now, I know it's going to take longer with motorcycles because there's a lot more of this on motorcycles, but if you don't fight it now, it's going to take hold quick and it's going to get all of us before we can react. So what's the conclusion? Is it still worth riding a motorcycle? Yes, of course it is. Is it worth the risk? Yeah! Because I think if you love something, you should do it no matter what. You should do your best to make sure that that's part of your life. And it doesn't matter what obstacles you've got to overcome, you still should do that thing, because what's the point of your life if you don't? What sort of a life would you have if you don't experience the things that you have a deep love for? So fight the good fight against the forces of evil that are working against us. That's purpose, and that's going to keep motorcycling going. And if you like today's video, you're going to love this video, 9 signs you're actually a good motorcycle rider.
Using all that's left, somewhere in your chest, on your sweetheart hit a mist. Oh, oh.